Hi, everyone, and welcome to the virtual kickoff of Words and Music 2022. Thank you to everyone in the comments who's already saying hello. We're so excited to see you here. So, just a quick hello and who we are for who are new. Words and Music is operated by One Book, One New Orleans. We are a nonprofit that focuses on literacy in our community. We pick one book every year. We encourage everyone in the community to read the same book at the same time. And we have free public programming throughout the year. Part of that programming is Words and Music. Most of this festival is indeed free. But when we do all of this programming and get all this together, we have to recognize that approximately 1 in 4 in New Orleans who are over the age of 16 struggle with literacy, either with accessing resources or with the ability to read, write, and comprehend. So what we do is we develop a curriculum around the one book we select every year, and we give that curriculum and the book free of charge to adult education programs throughout the city. We also give the book to the educational programs in both adult and juvenile prisons. We give the book to the New Orleans Public Library. Every branch has 2 copies so that if you love to read but you can't afford to get the book at your bookstore, you can access that book for free. And last but not least, we get the book into the ears of the blind and print handicapped through a partnership with WREH Reading Radio. Thank you so much. Our tech guru Candace is behind the scenes saying learn more and donate at onebookonenola.org. And when you donate, you're supporting the festival and also all of the year-round work we do to uplift literacy in the community. And we are so excited tonight to kick off our 5th year of directing Words and Music, celebrating Sylvia Plath's 90th birthday. And if you've heard me on the radio or you've read some of the press about this festival, you know that tonight we're going to be looking at Plath as a craftsperson, someone who was incredibly devoted to revision, to rhyme, to punctuation, to making all the pieces of a poem matter. And to do that, we have with us tonight 3 poets that are going to knock your socks off. I am going to read their bios in the order in which we are going to hear from them. We're going to start this evening with Kay Murphy. She's a professor emerita at the University of New Orleans, where she taught in the English department, the creative writing workshop, the honors program, and served as poetry editor for Bayou. Her awards include the Louisiana Division of the Arts Individual Artist Grant for her poetry, a university-wide Excellence in Teaching Award, and UNO Author Award in 2022. Since coming to UNO in the fall of 1984, Kay has published over 50 essays and reviews of contemporary poetry in national journals that are too numerous to mention. Besides her reviews, she's published fiction in such journals as Ascent and Fiction International. Her heart genre, poetry, has appeared in over 100 journals, including the Mississippi Review and Painted Bride Quarterly. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, The Autopsy and Belief Blues. Her 3rd collection, Soul Tooth Alphabet, is looking for a publisher. She's taught in several countries, and her most recent is as editor of On a Wednesday Night, the Creator Workshop University of New Orleans. Welcome, Kay. Next up, we will have Carolyn Hembree. Carolyn Hembree was born in Bristol, Tennessee. Her debut poetry collection, Skinny, came out in 2012. In 2016, Trio House Book, her 2nd, Rigging a Chevy in a Time Machine and Other Ways to Escape the Plague. Selected by Neil Shepard for the 2015 Trio and by Stephanie Strickland for the 2015 Rochelle Ratner Memorial Award. Her poetry appeared in many journals such as the Colorado Review and the Southern Review. She received the 2017 Atlas Grant from the Louisiana Board of Regents and has also received grants and fellowships from Penn, the Louisiana Division of the Arts, and the Southern Arts Federation. A professor in the MFA program at the University of New Orleans, she was awarded the 2017 International Alumni Association Excellence in Teaching Award. Carolyn serves as the poetry editor of Bayou magazine. Welcome, Carolyn. And last but not least, we have Toi Derricotte, whose sixth collection of poetry, New and Selected Poems, was shortlisted for the 2019 National Book Award. She was awarded the Frost Medal from the Poetry Society of America in 2020 and the Wallace Stevens Award from the Academy of American Poets in 2021. With Cornelius Eady, she founded Cave Canem, a home for many voices of African American poetry, in 1996. Welcome, Toi. All right, I'm going to let you all take it away. Except I'm going to come back on to tell Kate she is on mute.
I'm on mute?
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore, she said. Happy birthday to Sylvia Plath, actually on the 27th of October. She made much of her birthdays, writing a couple of her longest poems about them and a mysterious present that she received. So the celebration is one which she would approve. Since I am the warm-up band for the two rock stars, I am taking you back to her earlier work, to the poet who was insecure and overly confident, who turned at the vastness of the white page, who needed to be given subjects, many of which were given by her husband in the early years of their marriage, who could not find the right word without a thesaurus, which she pitched while writing Ariel. And most who know Plath at all know only Ariel. It was 1957 and 8, and Plath and Hughes both had teaching positions in the States. Hughes' publications in poetry and his poetry reputation was on the rise. Her poetry was being rejected. And during this period, she was suffering from exhaustion, insomnia, and writer's block. Her anxiety level rose as talk began about Hughes sleeping with his students. She unanimously was offered a renewed contract, but turned it down. By December, she suffered from viral pneumonia. As the 1958 turned to the spring break, she still wasn't writing. But during that time, she had a stack of art books, and in 8 days, she wrote 8 poems, which came effortlessly. I'm not going to be able to look up. If you were to study these complex formal ekphrastic poems, you could not imagine anything less than a Herculean effort. I chose not to talk about several of them because they are so dense. I was curious about her love of visual art, which she claimed as her deepest inspiration, because given the sonic texture and beauty of her poems, I was convinced that music played a substantial role in her work, but truth be, it didn't. She said she was tone deaf. Painting, it turns out, was an integral part of her life since the age of 5, when her mother enrolled her in the art class at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. There are 15 ekphrastic poems are represented in her work, none of them in Ariel. The collected poems, published in 1981, 18 years after her death, won the first posthumous Pulitzer Prize given to a poet. It also opens with the poem Conversation Among the Ruins, after a 1927 painting by Giorgio de Chirico. And we can now look at the painting. Thank you. I only had the courage to talk about visual art because when COVID hit, I was determined to keep as mentally alert as possible, and I spent the first year studying paintings on YouTube. De Chirico's father was Greek, and his paintings, minimalism, simplicity, and Greek motifs are typical during this period of his work. For the time being, you'll need to accept my reading of the paintings and the poems and discern your own later. So, the painting. We are part of an audience watching a Greek tragedy. Because there are only two actors, we are pre-Sophocles, who introduced the third actor. The woman wears a toga on her body and a psyche knot in her hair, a style which pulls the hair back and twists it in a knot and invokes the spirit of Psyche and her disastrous affair with Eros. Plath's use of mythology throughout her work makes de Chirico a natural. What is anomalous in the painting is the man in suit and tie. And notice the framed photo on the wall is a portrait of him, suggested by the same tilt of the head. The man's mouth is shut, so he is not the one speaking. We cannot see the woman's mouth. His posture over her is menacing. The two figures could easily represent Apollo, orderly and in control, and Dionysus, out of control, as Plath demonstrates in her poem. Plath's poem is anything but minimalist. An Italian sonnet which turns on two slant rhymes and divides into 3 sentences. I say this to emphasize the severe, rigorous challenges she put on herself. Here's a quotation from her during this period. Poetry is a tyrannical discipline. You have to go so far, so fast, in such a small space, you have to burn away all the peripherals. The poem. The poem is not a conversation, but a monologue by the woman, which Plath gives full agency. It is her house. He is the intruder. Yet that portrait hangs as a symbol of their once love relationship. The man's destructive rage is emphasized throughout. And these are all quotations. He stalks. He is wild like an animal. He is furious. He disturbs her beautiful things. His eye is stormy. He drives out magic. His look is black. And given the final question of the poem, we know that not even language can save this relationship. She did not record the poem, so I will read it here. Conversation among the ruins. Through portico of my elegant house you stalk with your wild furies, disturbing garlands of fruit and the fabulous lutes and peacocks, rending the net of all decorum which holds the whirlwind back. Now rich order of walls is fallen. Rooks croak above the appalling ruin. In bleak light of your stormy eye, magic takes flight like a daunted witch, quitting castle when real days break. Fractured pillars frame prospects of rock, while you stand heroic in coat and tie. I sit composed in Grecian tunic and Psyche knot, rooted to your black look. The play turned tragic. With such blight wrought on our bankrupt estate, what ceremony of words can patch the havoc? The ceremony of words holds us as audience still in the tragic play, and the gesture of patching a fallen order of walls is like, as I like to put it, putting a Band-Aid on an amputation. This is a tragedy without redemption. It's Oedipus Rex without Oedipus at Colonus. It's Dante's Inferno without the Paradiso. Then let's return to 1958 and the teaching and the exhaustion and the writer's block. Finally, freed from teaching duties during spring vacation, she experienced a rush of inspiration that was unmatched until her creation of the aerial poems in the fall of 1962. In a wildly enthusiastic letter to her mother, she seemed possessed by the muses and for the first time had struck a rich ore. I had about 7 or 8 paintings and etchings I wanted to write on as poem subjects, and bang, after the first one, Virgin in a Tree, after an early etching of Paul Klee, I ripped into another, probably the biggest and best poem I've ever written, on a magnificent etching by Klee entitled Perseus. She sent 5 of them to the New Yorker as a sure thing, returned to teaching and stopped writing, and a month later, the New Yorker rejected all 5 poems. I just want to make her more like us. One of the poems which charmed me before I knew it was an ekphrastic is Snake Charmer. One word, after Henri Rousseau's exotic landscape. Can you post that painting, please? Thank you. With the fantastical flowers and trees behind, bathed sort of in a warm moonlight. Rousseau's painting is The Snake Charmer. It's inspired by a friend's reminiscences of her visit to India, a continent Rousseau never saw. I could send you a photo of City Park in New Orleans, and it would look very much like this lush, primitive, prehistoric scene. A dark woman with flashing eyes is piping the snakes. Snake Charmer is written in a variant of the terza rima, 3-line stanzas in which the first and third line rhyme. Plath omits the middle interlocking rhyme. She enjams all of the tercets except the first one, which creates a continuous swaying back and forth as we read the lines and are charmed like the snakes. And also, as part of her mimetic enchantment, she repeats keywords. Snake Charmer. As the gods began one world and man another, so the Snake Charmer begins a snaky sphere with moon eye, mouth pipe. He pipes, pipes green, pipes water. Pipes water green until green waters waver with reedy links and necks and undulatings. And as his notes twine green, the green river shapes its images around his songs. He pipes a place to stand on. but no rocks, no floor. A wave of flickering grass tongue supports his foot. He pipes a world of snakes, of sways and coilings from the snake-rooted bottom of his mind. And now nothing but snakes is visible. The snake scales have become leaf, become eyelid. Snake bodies, bough, breast of tree and human. And he within this snakedom rules the writhings, which makes manifest his snakehood and his might with pliant tunes from his thin pipe. Out of this green nest, as out of Eden's navel, twist the lines of snaky generations. Let there be snakes. And snakes there were, are, will be. Till yawns consume this piper, and he tires of music and pipes the world back to the simple fabric of snake warp, snake weft, pipes the cloth of snakes to a melting of green waters, till no snake shows its head, and those green waters back to water, to green, to nothing like a snake, puts up his pipe and lids his moony eye. The poem is an ars poetica, describing both the creation and destruction of one's work. The snakes, although in relation to the Garden of Eden, are not malevolent. They have no personification and human characteristics whatsoever, but simply revel in their snakedom. The music both creates and destroys them. And I leave you with this question. Why does Plath make the piper a male? Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. I'm so glad we're sharing a panel together, and not just a panel, a screen. So that's fantastic. I am going to pull up my page. My name is Carolyn Hembree, and as an apprentice who has studied Sylvia Plath's drafts to better my poetry and to teach craft to my students, I would like to discuss revisions to her late poem, Sheep in Fog. First, I'll provide brief background relevant to Sylvia Plath's early artistic development, in addition to what Kay has already shared with us. The biographical information comes from Heather Clark's masterful biography, Red Comet. Plath's mother read poetry to her children, Sylvia and Warren, and Plath wrote her first poem titled Thoughts at age 5. By age 8, she was beginning to revise her poetry. She tried 3 versions of her poem Snow. Also, when she was 8, the Sunday Boston Herald carried her poem titled Poem. After publication, she expanded and retitled poem My House. By 8, she was right in perfect meter, trochaic tetrameter and trochaic trimeter, and started playing a more flexible iambic line influenced by Yeats. So from her earliest juvenilia, Plath explored revision through adding, cutting, and rewriting. By age 15, her diary became, like most of our writers' notebooks that we carry around, except far more expansive and also much more vigilantly kept. So she used her notebook to explore language, imagery, and subjects for her poems. Those were explored in her diary. Plath's apprenticeship as a poet, including academic study at Smith and Cambridge, teaching at Smith, one-on-one mentorship by and of other poets, reading and reviewing widely and writing daily, continued unremittingly for the next quarter century. Thanks to this intense creative study and practice, Plath was able, I believe, to draft and revise her late poems with relative speed. The first draft of Sheep in Fog, which you'll see now. You won't see the first draft. The first draft was handwritten, okay? And so there's only a partial one of it available. The second draft, a typescript with marginalia, Plath's marginalia, you can see on the left side of the page. The first and second drafts were completed on December 2nd, 1962. She revised the poem into its final form on January 28th, 1963. And that is visible on the right hand of the page. You know, if you know me at all, you know there's going to be a handout. So this is our handout that we'll be looking at for much of my little talk here. But just for discussing the revisions she made, I'll read Plath's brief introductions prepared for a January 1963 BBC broadcast of her reading a set of poems which included Sheep in Fog and 7 other new poems. According to Heather Clark in Red Comet, the broadcast never aired because a features script editor decided that the late poems were, quote, emotionally overcharged, end quote. So we do not have a recording of Plath reading Sheep in Fog, nor do we have the BBC recording. We do, however, have the script. You may find Plath's BBC script in the appendix of the restored edition of Ariel. Because Sheep in Fog was not included in Plath's intended Ariel, it's kind of ironic, but that is where you will find her introduction for that, as well as the other poems that were to be in the BBC broadcast. So here are Plath's words on Sheep in Fog. These are her words for the BBC broadcast introducing all 8 of the poems. These new poems of mine have one thing in common. They were all written at about 4 in the morning, that still, blue, almost eternal hour before cock crow, before the babies cry, before the glassy music of the milkman settling his bottles. If they have anything else in common, perhaps it is that they are written for the ear, not the eye. They are poems written out loud. Her introduction to Sheep in Fog. In this poem, the speaker's horse is proceeding at a slow, cold walk down a hill of macadam to the stable at the bottom. It is December. It is foggy. In the fog, there are sheep. Sheep in fog. The hills step off into whiteness. People or stars regard me sadly. I disappoint them. The train leaves a line of breath. Oh, slow horse, the color of rust. Hooves, dolorous bells. All morning, the morning has been blackening. A flower left out. My bones hold a stillness. The far fields melt my heart. They threaten to let me through to a heaven, starless and fatherless, a dark water. One of the most remarkable elements of this poem, Sheep in Fog, is the unchanging, resigned tone of the poem. As with her juvenilia, you can see on the left-hand side, again, the draft version, that Plath reworks the title. She expands then reduces it from fog sheep to sheep in a fog to sheep in fog. Whereas fog sheep evokes sort of a whimsical flock, a variant on cloud animals, sheep in a fog front loads sheep with its multiple meanings and grabs the idiom in a fog, meaning days. Sheep in fog, the final title, keeps the residue of the idiom, but with a single pivot point in between the two function words. The final title also introduces the motif of disappearance. I want to focus on the last tercet, which is where the revisions come in between the second draft and the final draft. It appears entirely rewritten. The draft reads, and you can see this in her handwriting, patriarchs till now immobile, in heavy wools, row off as stones or clouds with the faces of babies. Aside from the speaker, perhaps, here is the only instance of sheep, though metaphorical, in the poem. The series of departures in the hills that start in stanza 1, the train that leaves in stanza 2, the flower that has been left out in stanza 4, climax patriarchs who row off in stanza 5. The sonic echo of the R sounds of patriarchs echoes the rhymes of far and heart in stanza 4 by comparing patriarchs, sheep, to stones or clouds. She echoes the flattening equivalence and grammar of the second line, people or stars. Heavenly Wolves also calls back to stars of the first stanza. The last stanza of the final version reads, they threaten to let me through to a heaven, starless and fatherless, a dark water. When I first read this revision, I thought it was a complete rewrite. But now I marvel at more of the residue that remains of this excised stanza in the new stanza. Most obviously, the word patriarchs is transformed to the plainer Old English father, but with the suffix less, which achieves the detached and empty tone and furthers the motif of disappearance. Likewise, heavenly suggests stars. There's our residue. But then it's flattened out to starless, the sonic and grammatical companion for fatherless. Heavenly now becomes heaven. The residue of row off, suggests the dark water of the rewrite. Her impulse of the draft to extend the last line, it's 13 syllables when we look at the draft 2, row off as stones or clouds with the faces of babies. There we have 13. That impulse remains in the final version with the last line at 10 syllables, the longest line of the poem, along with line 3, which is also 10 syllables. Through revisions to the syntax, diction, alliteration, and rhyme, Plath's final stanza sustains the music and tone of Sheep in Fog. Like the previous stanzas, the revised stanza coheres sonically. The consonants of they, threaten, and through is picked up again with the sound of fatherless. The R sounds of starless, fatherless, dark, and water sonically echo flower, far, and heart of the penultimate stanza. Although the final version's penultimate stanza is closed, the marginalia on her original typescript shows a comma after fields melt my heart. Fields is the antecedent for they in they threaten. So I wonder, was she considering her signature comma splice that we see in the late poems and we can see in here? Maybe. Rather than adding a new figure and sentence agent, patriarchs, as she has in the preceding stanzas with hills of stanza 1, people are stars, and I of, and then in stanza 2, train, stanza 3, morning, stanza 4, bones and fields. By retaining the agent of stanza 4 in stanza 5, she creates a turn in the poem. without altering the mood of resignation. Whereas the fundament patriarch's row is disrupted by the modifying, till now immobile in heavenly wools. The syntax of the final version is the most fluid of the poem, with the lines parsed rather than enjambed. Disruptions and fragmentation have been given up. Rather than the happening of the verb row, the verb threaten relays possibility, yet maintains the poem's stasis. From the trial and error scratch-outs before heaven and dark water, we can see Plath's struggle to claim the indefinite article A, while abandoning A helpfully distilled her title. In the final lines, that indefinite article functions to generalize heaven and to allow dark water to further describe a heaven. What a different poem if it read, to let me through to heaven, starless and fatherless, dark water. Suddenly, we lose Plath's signature tone here of removal. Since opening and closing words were so important to Plath, she stated her intention to open her Ariel, which is the restored version, with the word love and end with the word spring, opening sheep in fog with the hills and ending with water, opening and closing with the landscape, the literal hills of Devonshire, and closing with the metaphysical water seems extremely relevant. On that note, I will close by sharing Plath's thoughts and Plath on writing in her 1962 interview with Peter Orr of the British Council.
Right. Having written company, other poets. I've not heard doctors, midwives, lawyers, anything but writers. I think writers and artists are the most narcissistic people. I mustn't say this. I like many of them. In fact, a great many of my friends happen to be writers and artists. But I must say, what I admire most, or I certainly find myself looking toward, is the person who masters an area of practical experience and can teach me something. I mean, my local midwife has taught me how to keep bees. Well, she can't understand it when I have written a poem, when I'm writing one. Having written one, well, then you fall away very rapidly from having been a poet to becoming a sort of poet in rest, which isn't the same thing at all. But I think the actual experience of writing a poem is a magnificent one.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I was waiting for Pearl London to say more. I just love hearing her voice. She was my teacher and my first teacher of poetry at the New School. So hearing her voice, she was the one who first read Daddy to me. So it's such a continuation of love to be with my dear friends and brilliant poets and scholars. Kay, thank you so much. Carolyn, thank you so much. writing poems that you want someone else to read is creating between you and the other reader a form that contains all the feelings you want them to understand and at the same time can enter them, like transporting your genes to another universe where they don't speak the same language. Maybe you have to go through a wormhole, whatever. You have to learn how to get as much of you as you can over there, like a magic bullet, something that pierces through their ordinary occupations. They're walking, eating, thinking, talking, reading, and suddenly, like that rocket ship, you arrive inside them. It's especially difficult if you've been taught to be silent, to be small, to be unseen, to not be angry, to be pretty and sweet and of use to others. But a poem is a wonderful place where you can do what you need to do in order to make it over to the other side. How does a Black woman who has never read a poem by a Black woman, that's me. At that time, I hadn't. I was 29 years old in Pearl's class. I had never read a poem by a Black woman in grade school, high school, college, although I must admit, Pearl did read a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks called The Mother, which was actually published in 1949. She won the Pulitzer that year for her book, Gwendolyn Brooks did. And I sort of wonder if Plath and Robert Lowell hadn't found that poem in that Pulitzer book and taken a look at it. The Mother is about women having to have abortions because they're poor. And it's a very revealing poem of emotions and a family structure and society, all the things that Lowell, Plath, and Sexton, the confessionals, were writing about. If poetry is a form of language that holds the most that we know of truth and beauty, which is what I believe, how could I approach it? I, who existed so far away from the ivory towers, embattled as I was with all literary models, my clipped, fearful self, conspiratorial and full of secrets. I was desperate for a way. And when my teacher, Pearl London, read us poems by the confessionals in the early 70s, especially Robert Lowell, who examined emotions and subjects I had been taught we were, as women and Black people, supposed to keep secret, including disappointment with the family, mental illness, and especially shame. I began to glimpse a possibility for writing poems, but it wasn't until after Pearl London read Daddy by Plath that I realized I had within myself something that had been blocked, something that I had been taught would destroy me if it was expressed, which instead I learned when she read Daddy would liberate me. From rage, it is possible to create poetry that can almost skip over the brain and go straight to the heart. You know, Ariel was named after her horse. And then when I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking, there was that famous horse that got into Troy, remember? caused a lot of damage. Daddy, you do not do anymore, black shoe, in which I have lived like a foot for 30 years. Poor and white, barely daring to breathe or at you, Daddy. I have had to kill you. You died before I had time. Marble heavy, a bag full of God, ghastly statue with one gray toe big as a Frisco seal, and a head in the freakish Atlantic, where it pours bean green over blue in the waters off beautiful Nauset. I used to pray to recover you. Ach, du. In the German tongue, in the Polish town scraped flat by the roller of wars. But the name of the town is common. My Polak friend says there are a dozen or two, so I could never tell where you put your foot, your root. I could never talk to you. The tongue stuck in my jaw. It's stuck in a barbed wire snare. Ich. I could hardly speak. I thought every German was you. And the language, obscene. An engine chuffing me off like a Jew to Dachau, Auschwitz, Belsen. I began to talk like a Jew. I think I may well be a Jew. The snows of the Tyrol, the clear beer of Vienna are not very pure or true. With my gypsy ancestress and my weird luck and my tarot pack, I may be a bit of a Jew. I have always been scared of you, with your Luftwaffe and your gobbledygoo and your Aryan eye, bright blue. Panzer man, oh you, not God, but a swastika, so black no sky could squeak through. Every woman adores a fascist, a boot in the face, the brute heart of a brute like you. You stand at the blackboard, Daddy, in a picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot, but no less the devil for that. No, not any less the black man who bit my pretty red heart in two. I was 10 when they buried you. At 20, I tried to die to get back to you. I thought even the bones would do. But they pulled me out of the sack and they stuck me together with glue. And then I knew what to do. I made a model of you, a man in black with a Mein Kampf look and a love of the rack and the screw. And I said, I do. So, Daddy, I'm finally through. The black telephone's off at the roof. The voices just can't worm through. If I've killed one man, I've killed two. The vampire who said he was you and drank my blood for a year, 7 if you really want to know. Daddy, you can lie back now. There's a stake in your fat black heart. And the villagers never liked you. They are dancing and stamping on you. They always knew it was you. Daddy, you bastard. I'm through. Oh, man. You know, I just love how she plays around with with all those myths. There was an old lady who lived in the shoe, and there she is in that black shoe at the beginning of the poem. Just over and over, she just is turning it all around, taking control. And at the very bottom is this, ooh, holy moly. She really showed them what they could do with it. Well, Anne Sexton's first book, All My Pretty Ones, about her mental illness, was published in 1961. And in an epigraph, she quoted Kafka. "The books we need are the kind that act upon us like a misfortune, that make us suffer like the death of someone we love more than ourselves, that make us feel as if we were on the verge of suicide or lost in a forest remote from all human habitation. A book should serve as the axe for the frozen sea within us." Sylvia Plath mothered me. She mothered me. Without her, I don't think I'd be alive today. She gave me permission to use rage. I think I went home that very day, and that Pearl London read Daddy in the class and wrote my first poem to speak of my rage at the literary fathers. And it was in my first book. Poem number 1. To hell with Ezra Pound. To hell with all you white-clad men of the two-pronged dream. One making love to Rebecca, the other gone down to Sheba's to get sucked. Damn you, Odysseus. I don't want to be your cunt or consort. I don't want to genuflect to your fop. Worship at your altars where the toad-pricked ass bishops line up like unbaked pies. I'm thrice removed from the sacrosanct. The brat down the street nibbles like a rat at my kid's balls. Today he comes home from school and tells me, "Mama, the kids at school say, how can you be black when you got straight hair and white skin? You must be Indian." Remember when your grandma Becky turned 14 and the old master's son pushed her down in the field and took his first piece of ass? Becky didn't say a word. And when her belly swole up big as hell and the little bastard came out red, your granddaddy kissed it instead of smashing its head. The man wants more than love. He wants every ounce of juice your body is capable of secreting. More than for you to kiss his turds, he wants you to save them for posterity. Piss on you, man. Last in a long line of ass eaters, piss on your feast. I want to come down on you with my teeth, bite it till the tendrils stand out electrified, gorge on you like a teat, bathe in the black lake of your blood. So, and I just want to say a final note about Sylvia Plath mothering me, because when you mother one emotion, you mother all the emotions. So she also mothered that gentle little terrified part of me that was even more afraid than rage. And I thank her for that. So this is a poem that was very, very scary to publish, for Telly the fish. Telly's favorite artist was Alice Neal. When he first came to my house, I propped up her bright yellow shade with open window and a vase of flowers postcard-sized behind his first fishbowl. I thought it might give him something to look at, like the center of a house you keep coming back to, a hearth, a root for your eye. It was a wondering in me that came up with that thought, a kind of empathy across my air and through his water, maybe the first word I cast out between us in case he could hear. Telly would stare at that painting for hours, hanging there with his glassy eyes wide open. At night, he wanted the bottom, as if it were a warm bed. He'd lay there, sort of dreaming, his eyes gray and dim and thoughtless. For months he came back to her, the way a critic or lover can build a whole lifetime on the long study of one great work. I don't know why he stopped. Maybe it was when he first noticed me, the face above my hand feeding, for sometimes when I'd set the food on top, he'd still watch me eye to eye, as if saying, food isn't enough. Once, when I bent, he jumped out of the water and kissed my lips. What is a fish's kiss like? You'd think it would be cold, slimy, but it was quick, nippy, hard. For all the fears of touch, it takes so long for us to learn how to take in. When he stopped coming to the top, I guess I did all the wrong things. The fish medicine that smelled, measured carefully for his ounce of weight. For his gills worked so hard, and he lay still, tipped over slightly like a dead boat. How do you stop the hurt of having to breathe? After, I took him to the Yellow Bridge, right near the Andy Warhol Museum. I had put a paper towel in a painted egg and laid him in it. And at the top, I opened the casket and emptied him out into the water. Thank you. And Sylvia, happy birthday, girlfriend. I know you're up there with Lucille having fun. I know you are.
Okay, we got it. We got it. We got it. There's 90 candles on this cake. Okay, so we are going to sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sylvia. Happy birthday to you. Woo! And you can see her name is on it. Happy 90th birthday, Sylvia. So before we hear and we listen to Sylvia Plath read a birthday present, get your treat for yourself. Get your little something beautiful that you can eat while we listen. So we're going to cut the cake. We're going to cut the cake and start snacking, and we're going to listen in about 2 minutes to Sylvia, and that will be the end of our panel, is of course listening to her read her longer poem for her birthday. So get your sweets. We're using the good china.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is my grandmother's china that I have.
I was there.
I wish you were here too. We miss you. So a big rose. For you.
Okay. Yes.
And for you, Toy.
Mine is bumblebees
Toy's
on
not
it.
here, but we're going to cut a piece of cake for Toy anyhow.
Okay, with bumblebees.
Yes.
Ooh.
Toy, here's your piece.
Thank you.
You're getting a piece anyhow. You see your bees?
Mwah, 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 mwah.
Okay. So there's your piece. And I'm going to give myself a piece. Hopefully everybody's getting their little snacks. Yummy snacks. I'm not sure if these are edible bees or not. Are these edible bees? Yeah, it's covered in bees. That's the other thing. You can see all the little tiny bees. See?
No, they're plastic.
We can't eat it?
No. Not a good idea.
You can't eat it.
No.
Okay. There's little bees all over it too.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Everybody should have their sweet now, or tree, or whatever you like. And we'll settle in. Sorry, I like icing.
Oh,
Settle in.
excellent.
You take the rose. You like the icing.
Really? You don't like the icing? Okay.
You like it more.
Where's the cake from, Carolyn?
Mm?
Where's the cake from?
Cake is from let me think. It was the Fresh Market. Rouse's.
Oh, I like their cake a lot.
Yes. Yay. Are we ready to hear the recording?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Birthday present. What is this behind this veil? Is it ugly? Is it beautiful? It is shimmering. Has it breasts? Has it edges? I'm sure it is unique. I'm sure it is just what I want. When I'm quiet at my cooking, I feel it looking. I feel it thinking. Is this the one I am to appear for? Is this the elect one? The one with black eye pits and a scar, measuring the flour, cutting off the surplus, adhering to rules, to rules, to rules. Is this the one for the Annunciation? My God, what a laugh. But it shimmers, it does not stop, and I think it wants me. I would not mind if it was bones or a pearl button. I do not want much of a present anyway this year. After all, I'm alive only by accident. I would have killed myself gladly that time any possible way. Now there are these veils shimmering like curtains, the diaphanous satins of a January window, white as baby's bedding and glittering with dead breath. Oh, ivory, it must be a tusk there, a ghost column. Can you not see I do not mind what it is? Can you not give it to me? Do not be ashamed. I do not mind if it is small. Do not be mean. I am ready for enormity. Let us sit down to it, one on either side, admiring the gleam, the glaze, the mirrory variety of it. Let us eat our last supper at it like a hospital plate. I know why you will not give it to me. You are terrified. The world will go up in a shriek, and your head with it. Bossed, brazen, an antique shield, a marvel to your great-grandchildren. Do not be afraid. It is not so. I will only take it and go aside quietly. You will not even hear me opening it. No paper crackle, no falling ribbons, no scream at the end. I do not think you credit me with this discretion. If you only knew how the veils were killing my days. To you they are only transparencies, clear air. But my God, the clouds are like cotton, armies of them, they are carbon monoxide. Sweetly, sweetly I breathe in, filling my veins with invisibles, with a million probable motes that tick the years off my life. You were silver-suited for the occasion. Oh, adding machine. Is it impossible for you to let something go and have it go whole? Must you stamp each piece in purple? Must you kill what you can? There is this one thing I want today, and only you can give it to me. It stands at my window big as the sky. It breathes from my sheets, the cold, dead center where spilt lives congeal and stiffen to history. Let it not come by the mail, finger by finger. Let it not come by word of mouth. I should be 60 by the time the whole of it was delivered and too numb to use it. Only let down the veil, the veil, the veil. If it were death, I would admire the deep gravity of it, its timeless eyes. I would know you were serious. There would be a nobility then. There would be a birthday. And the knife not carve but enter, pure and clean as the cry of a baby, and the universe slide from my side.
Wow. Thank you all so much. I always say that poetry is my favorite literary genre. I will shamelessly say that all day long. And the reason that I say that is because it is the most like music. And I love the fact that you guys really brought that to life in your readings and in your analysis of Plath, whose voice is so mellifluous. And it's also really serendipitous that it kicks off a festival called Words and Music, not only because Plath reminds me so much of music herself, but also because tomorrow, our next event, the one that is kicking off our live festival celebration, is a retrospective of the New Orleans Poetry Journal Press, which was one of the very first presses ever to publish Sylvia Plath. And that event takes place at 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow morning at the New Orleans Jazz Market. So we hope all of you watching here in New Orleans will come down to the New Orleans Jazz Market and will celebrate literature and our city with us for the next 3 days. And for those of you watching at home, not in New Orleans, all of those sessions will be recorded and broadcast at a later date. So subscribe to our YouTube channel or like us on Facebook so that you can watch those when they become available. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Toi. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Kay. You all are so amazing. I cannot thank you enough for this evening. My heart is full. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. I'll be the one who looks like things know what they're going on. Bye.